Hey everyone, so we've done this with both Blakely and Arlo, and we're going to do it with Chance now. We're going to kind of tell the story, and that way we have a journal of our thoughts about how Chance came to be.
So his name's Chance David Jolison. David after my dad, and Chance because it took us a solid 7 months to decide on a name. And that was the only one that really just felt right in our soul. So Chance, we don't know anyone with that name. And so anyways, we really love that. He came December 21st of 2020. He's our little Christmas star.
At 12:14 a.m.
Yeah, we'll get to that point about why that was right after midnight. But yeah, so basically, pregnancy with him went really, pretty similar to the girls, just with a little bit of different symptoms and things, but pretty basic, pretty easy. No complications. My doctors always say I have boring pregnancies, which is a huge blessing. And we had some right towards the end. His birthday, his due date was on the 22nd of December. And when we conceived him, we thought we were like a month ahead, but come to find out he was closer to Christmas than we were anticipating. So with that, we were a little bit anxious, but I also felt comforted knowing that my two daughters before came early. So I was like, okay, you won't have a birthday that close to Christmas. Because Blakely came during her 38th week and Arlo came during her 39th week. And so I was like, okay, we're good. And for him, I feel like because I was anticipating him coming early, as soon as I hit 37 weeks, I was ready to go. I was like, okay. And then the 37th week passed, 38th week passed, and then we were within the 39th week, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I started having a little bit of false labor, but I know the difference between real, active labor, real contractions, and the false things, just because this is my third time doing it. So I knew they weren't real, but at the same time, I was like, when is it going to happen? It was within the 39th week, so I was getting a little bit anxious because I was feeling the pressure to induce. Not that anyone really put pressure on me, but just the fact that I didn't want a Christmas Eve or Christmas baby, because I didn't want for his whole life to share that holiday with his birthday. So I
have a pretty busy work schedule, and the way the work schedule worked out this year was I had Christmas week off. So from the 21st until the 28th, I think, I had off. And then I work the whole next week. I'm on call at the hospital.
It's like trauma or something, right?
Yeah, trauma. I'll probably be there all day, every day for New Year's week.
Yeah.
And so we were really anticipating him coming early so I could spend some time with him and help out.
My mom came 2 weeks early, just ready to go.
Yeah. so we were getting nervous in that 39th week, what if he's the outlier, and he comes.
Maybe he's late or something.
Yeah, if he comes late and then he comes in the New Year's week, it would have been a disaster.
Yeah, it would have been really hard. So, we talked about inducing because Joe my doctor. So I went to the doctor within my 38th week, and I was 1 centimeter dilated, but 0% effaced or whatever. So I was like, okay, well at least I'm 1 centimeter, but I was not where I wanted to be, I guess. And then my 39th week, I had an appointment, and she said I was at 2 centimeters, but 70% effaced. So I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. It's not exactly where we want to be, but at least the false labor, the contractions that I was feeling was actually doing something. So that was kind of comforting. And then a couple of days went by, and she's like, well, for your next appointment, I had it scheduled on my due date, which is the 22nd. And she said, we'll talk about induction then, because I'm assuming you don't want a Christmas baby. And I was like, oh man, I feel like Heavenly Father is always given us our kids at the most perfect time, and I feel like being induced, there's nothing wrong with being induced, but for us, I just feel like we've had such significant moments in time that our kids have arrived that I felt like inducing would kind of take that out of the equation. It would be more our will and not the Lord's. And I also was anticipating doing it natural again, and I know inducing is also way more difficult from what I've heard, just with pain. And so there's just a lot of reasons why I don't want to get induced. And Joe had made a comment, I think on the 20th. And you said something about well, maybe we just need to think about being induced. And I'm like, but no, I don't know. So then we decided to
not get induced.
not get induced,
And, like,
but to use natural remedies.
Natural sources of labor induction, which worked,
It works every time.
on the 20th. You know, it's funny because we talked about induction and then we used, natural sources of labor induction.
But that wouldn't have worked if my body wasn't ready, though, right? Like, it just kind of...
Of course it wouldn't have worked. And then she went into labor, like, literally.
I started having contractions, like, probably within 30 minutes. And so...
And then... Yeah.
And then I could tell the difference. They were They felt different. They weren't just, like, mild menstrual cramps. They were, like... they just felt different. And so I knew that I was like, okay. And I almost didn't say anything because I'd had like these false contractions for a while, but something in me just knew like this is actually it this time. And so we started tracking them, and that was at about 2 p.m. That they started. And then I just kind of was like distracting myself around the house, like getting ready. And then I wanted to put my girls to bed, or I wanted to put Arlo to bed. Blake goes to bed a bit later, but I wanted to put her to bed, and her bedtime's around like 6:37. And so we decided to kind of like wait and put her to bed. And so we did that. And then I was like, okay, we have to go. Like, I know that I'm not at the point of like about to have this baby, but I also don't know how fast like the second part of labor is going to be. So I really just wanted to get to the hospital.
So I went to Walmart.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. He goes, this was at like 6 o'clock. He's like, I have to go pick up your gift, and I'm not going to go to the Walmart that's 5 minutes away. I'm going to choose the Walmart that's 20 minutes away.
I didn't choose it. It was the only available. It was the only place that I could reliably get it.
I was like, is it necessary to do that right now? So he was gone for like an hour, and which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when you're like, don't know how labor is going and you know you're actually in labor, that was kind of stressful.
I knew how labor was going.
You left at like 5, which is traffic time, and I'm like, you could have very easily gotten like
yeah,
stuck
but
somewhere.
I've watched your labor 3 times, so I knew the baby wasn't going to pop out. She may not have known, but I knew, and lo and behold, he didn't pop out. So I got home,
yeah.
and then we put
the
Arlo to
girls
sleep,
Yeah.
and then we got everything packed up, went to the hospital.
Yep, and then when we got there, they just put me in triage. They checked me, and I was having at this point contractions like every 3 to 5 minutes. But I was only at like, when we got there I was at a 4, which I was like, okay, I was hoping I'd be further along. But
Also goes to show how I know the labor.
Okay.
Right? Because on the drive there, we were taking guesses. She's like,
I was like, I think I want to be at least a 5, is what I said.
and I was like, you're going to be a 4.
No, you said 3.
I said 4.
You said 3.
I said 4.
Whatever.
Because I remember when she told me you were 4, I was super jazzed.
Yeah. So anyway, she goes, but good luck. Like, or she said, but good news, you'll be admitted. Like, you're on your way to like having this baby. We're not gonna send you home. So anyways, they admitted us, and then they kept asking like, or I kept talking to Joe because my whole pregnancy, I've tried to decide whether I wanted to do it natural or whether I wanted to do it with an epidural, and I couldn't come up with like an indefinite answer. I just prepared during my pregnancy for a natural delivery or unmedicated because that's what I did previous, and I pretty much loved my experiences. Well, I liked Blakely's, not so much Arlo's. Hers is a little bit more rough, but not because of anything. Anyways, watch the other story. You'll know that way. Anyways, so with this one, I thought I was going to do it natural, but then I was still questioning it at the end, and Joe looked at me and he was like, if you're still like on the fence, like you're going to get it. And I was like,
yeah,
I should just stop fighting it. I was like, I'm just going to get it. I'm just going to get it.
Yeah, I told her, I was like, if you have any doubts going in and you become, if you go into labor and you're in excruciating pain, you still have a doubt, you're not going to be able to power through and do it natural.
That is one thing you have to be.
Yeah,
for
and then
sure.
it's going to be too late, right? Because her other one, she did hypnobirthing and all this stuff.
I did that with this one too. I just hadn't made up my mind fully.
So she hadn't made up her mind when she was, 4 centimeters dilated and we were staying. So we were like, let's just do the epidural.
And so before I committed to it, I go, would you still love me though if I became paralyzed after this? Because that was one of my honest fears. I was like, what if they like hit something and then I don't get any feeling in my legs? And he was like, no, I won't leave you. Like, I'll still be married to you. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right, let's just do it. I think I asked you one other question, but I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember. Maybe if I take care of her. And I said, of course.
Oh yeah. He was like, I'll quit my job. And I was like, well, that's kind of sad. 'Cause I was like, how do we have money? Anyways, he eased my worry there. So I said, let's just do it. And then they admitted us and they said, well, we can't give you the epidural until you've had a full bag of IV fluids and we have to draw your blood to like run tests or whatever. And those labs have to come back. And so they go to stick my IV in. Oh my gosh. And she went into my vein. I've never had this happen where she stuck it in and it literally hit a nerve and it shot a shooting, painful feeling down my fingers. And I remember looking over at Joe, like wide-eyed, he's sitting on the couch, and I'm like, this hurts so bad. And she kept having to like go in my vein to try to, or go in my arm to like find the vein over and over again. And it kept hitting the same nerve over and over. And it was just like so painful. But she ended up going over on this side and she finally found the vein so we could start the IV fluid process. That was probably the most painful thing. Actually, not really. The contractions up at that point were pretty painful, but that was not pleasant. And then the IV fluids were going in, and then she ran my blood for some tests that they had to do, I guess. Yeah, just blood work to make sure everything was good, I guess. And then they could send in the anesthesiologist. So we had to wait about an hour for all of that to come back. And Joe was such a good support this time. I feel like with Blakely, everything happened so fast that I just felt like I was just like trucking through it myself. And then with Arlo, things were really painful. And so I just was in a different headspace. And I never really like leaned on you as much in my labors as I did this time. And so this time I was like, I just wanted you by me, and I wanted to actually hold your hand this time. Whereas before, I just wanted something hard, like the railing.
Last time I tried to hold her hand, she was like, "Yeah, get her away," and she just wanted to hold the railing on the bed. But she wanted to hold my hand this time, so that was good. Yeah. And she actually said it helped with the contractions, which were nice.
It was very interesting. In the middle of a contraction, he would squeeze my hand back. It wasn't just like me squeezing his hand; he would like counter squeeze. And I literally could feel the pain in my uterus not like it would decrease. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. So I was like, hey, so every time I had a contraction, I was like, come over here if he wasn't already by me. But most of the time he was actually in the bed with me. And so we were just kind of cuddling and I think we were watching football at some point. Yeah. Anyway, so then the IV fluids were in and the test came back. And so she said we were ready to have the anesthesiologist come in. And so they checked me one last time before that happened, and I was at a 6 and right about to transition, they said. And so the contractions were like really strong, but not yet transition strong, if that makes sense. And so the anesthesiologist came in and I had to like hunch over for her to like get situated and to like tape me up and everything. And so I was having contractions like every minute and a half at this point. And so I had multiple contractions just like hunched over, which was extremely very uncomfortable. But I had I was holding the nurse's hand in my right hand and I was holding Joe's hand in the other hand. And I was just like sitting there just trying to like take the contractions in a very uncomfortable position. And then she got everything in, everything was fine. And then they had me lay because they wanted it to be an even epidural, like numbed equally on both sides of my body. And so I was just like laying like this. And then I kept having contractions and I was like, how this is supposed to work, and it like wasn't working. And I kept having contractions that felt the same, like they didn't decrease in intensity. And so 20 minutes went by and I was still getting these contractions and they're like, what is going on? So they kind of lowered me back so that because my legs were starting to become numb, but not my stomach yet. And so it was like 30 minutes went by and so they started giving me,
they redosed her and then they gave her another bolus. So the anesthesiologist said he gave more medicine than he's ever given anybody. Part of it's because she's kind of tall, like 5'9".
Yeah, they kept saying I was tall, so I was like, yeah. And then I feel like looking back, pain medicine doesn't really work that well for me. Like I don't like taking Advil or I just don't feel like it's worth it. I feel like I still get pain even when I take stuff like that. And so it kind of made sense that I was a little bit resistant to the epidural because maybe I just have it takes more for my body to become numb. So they basically just like gave me so much medication. And then it still was taking up for a while, but when they lowered me back, it started decreasing, like my contractions started decreasing in time that I felt them. So that was like a promising sign. And so at that point, when they felt like it was kind of working, the anesthesiologist finally left. And then all of a sudden the nurses left.
And then it worked. She had no pain at all.
All of a sudden I was like I was Marco Poloing my friend Melanie and Colton. Like in the middle, I was like, this is kind of nice. They're kind of going away. Like I don't really have these contractions anymore. And then in the middle of me listening to one of their Marco Polos back to me, I had to lay my phone down, and I was like this, and I was like, I feel really weird. And I'm not really one to complain, and I think it's maybe because I'm afraid that something's actually wrong that I don't want to say anything. But I felt like I had to say something. So Joe was sitting on the couch, and I was like, babe, I was like, I feel really weird. And I was like, I feel like my face feels funny. Like, I didn't really have a way of explaining
She's
it.
like, my throat feels funny, my face funny. I was like,
yeah, I was like, I feel like my face and my throat were going numb, which it kind of made me like really nervous in terms of my throat going numb, because like you want to be able to breathe and swallow and like.
So I walked over there, and
He was like, "What's going on?" And so I was like, I felt really doped up. I was like, I feel so weird.
I pressed the blood. I like recycled the blood pressure for her, and her blood pressure was like 79/50, like something real low.
What's normal? Like
120/80, like very low. That's why she's feeling that way. And so we pressed the nurse button. Got
he
her to
raised
come
my
in.
bed. You raised my
Yeah,
bed.
first I raised her head up.
Because they had me laying back to try to get the epidural to move its way up, and then we think it. Do you think that I felt that way because it was moving up, or because of just the blood pressure?
I think it's probably multifactorial, both the fact that they gave you so much medicine, but then also that you were laying back.
It
I think
just hit me
the
all at
tingling in the
once.
face was definitely some of that stuff, but nonetheless, I lifted her up, called the nurse in, and then they pushed him ephedrine, and then
Which is what?
It's just something that'll constrict your blood vessels, make your blood pressure go back up. So they gave her something, blood pressure went back up to normal.
And then I started feeling. I was like,
and she was like, fine. She's like, something was wrong.
It was just so. I've never had any sort of scare like that. Like, I never knew what it felt like to have my blood pressure drop that low. But I was like a definite like, I feel funny. And then all of a sudden I was just like my normal self. I was like, okay, like I feel better. And then they were like, okay. And then for some reason they felt like they needed to check me, so they checked me and they're like, okay, you're at a 10. And I was like, I looked at Joe and I was like, wait, what?
She's like, woohoo! This is a 10? Yeah, I'm down for this.
I know what it feels like to be at a 10 unmedicated. And I was like, babe, we're legit about to have a baby right now. Like, this is crazy. Like, I felt like so there,
Yeah.
like in terms of like.
It was awesome. And it was 11:55 or 11:53.
I think it was more like.
It was like 11:51, 11:53, I don't know, in the 50s. And I was December 20th, and I knew like Jupiter and Saturn were coming together on the 21st, and I was like, it'd be really cool if we just had a December 21st baby. So let's just wait. Let's see if we can wait like
Explain
10
that a little
minutes.
bit, like this, the start.
Everybody knows. They all saw it. Jupiter and Saturn came together in the sky. They were like 0.1 arc degrees apart, which is closest they've been in like during the nighttime and visible in like 800 years. I think they've come together several other times, but not that we could see them. And that's in 800 years ago. That same, and not 800 years ago, but Jupiter and Saturn and then one other planet coming together was what made the Christmas star
For Jesus.
For Jesus.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just really cool and symbolic, and I wanted Chance to be born on the same day as the Christmas star. So
Especially because 2020 has been a really rough year. And so the fact that like ending the year on a high note in terms of focusing our attention on the Savior, the bright star is like brightness and the darkness that's been going on in terms of just the world right now. And so Chance being born on the 21st, the Christmas star baby, he's just kind of like the light for us.
yeah, the Christmas star, Jesus kind of gave hope to the world, and
Yeah.
2020 is a rough year, and so it was just really symbolic to have Chance born on the 21st.
So long story short, he made me wait to push him out.
Well, she was in no pain. It wasn't a big deal.
I know. I was like, well, if he's not in any distress or anything, like I'm fine waiting. Like I don't have that urge to push it.
And he looked fantastic. So
They said okay.
they said okay. They came back at like 12. I don't know, 12.
12:01, but then it took a while to
They didn't-
like
They didn't come back at 12:01, did they?
I don't know.
Oh, no, they came back a little bit after 12, maybe 12:05, 12:10, whatever. So then they got everything set up, and
That took a while because I was like, he's gonna deliver the baby, and so he had to wash his hands, and I just really wanted to make sure that that was gonna happen.
I was able to deliver Arlo, even though that was the plan because of all the chaos surrounding that birth. So I got my sterile gloves on and everything, and then basically baby was like ready to come, and so she looked. She's like, I think it might just be one push.
Well, yeah, because they asked me, they're like, how did your other
Yeah.
labors go? And I was like, oh, my first delivery, I pushed for like 16 minutes. My second one, I think I did it in like maybe 2 contractions. And she goes, okay, I think this one's going to be the same. And actually, we forgot about the water part because when she checked me, when she
When she
said
checked her, basically the water was like
before the baby.
Well, the water was like coming out of like
the body already, the bag. That's what she said. And then
Because
she like,
my water hadn't broken yet.
yeah,
Obviously.
and then obviously baby was like still up in
Trying to come down.
Yeah, like near the cervix. Cervix was dilated, but the water bag wasn't popped yet. And she was like, well, we can, you can push and then it'll pop, and Dad will take a bath, or we can just pop it and push.
And I was like, can we have a lotus birth or whatever they're called? I'm like, can we baby be born in the waters, like
an on-call birth
or what? Yeah, and I'm like, that would be freaking legit. Go like, and then she was not for it because she was like, it's
she's
just
like, I've
gonna
been doing this
explode in
21
my
years.
face.
I've been doing this 21 years. It's gonna explode. Is what she said. And so I was like, yeah, let's just whatever. So then popped it, I did not believe. I feel like I've seen the other two, but that was a lot of fluid.
You didn't see the water break. Well, maybe you saw because Arlo they popped it with Blakely. It popped when you were outside and it was in our house.
I don't know. It was crazy.
It was
a lot of fluid.
I heard it. It was like a gush of like
Lots of
waterfall.
amniotic fluid. And so then
Maybe that's why I was measuring so big the whole time. It's a lot of fluid.
And so then she was like, all right, let me know when you have another contraction. So
And I was feeling a little bit of pressure, obviously, like not something that I couldn't control, but I was like, oh yeah, I feel a little bit of pressure in my tailbone. Like she's like, okay, that means he's trying to come down. I'm like, okay. I was just really numbed up.
So the next contraction came, and she pushed.
Joe was there, and she had her hands under his just
in case I dropped the baby.
He was like, well, because you were as confident. You're like, I haven't done this in a while, and I don't want to like have butterfingers. And so she was like, okay, I'll be right here.
Well, yeah, that was like my worst fear is like me drop my own child on his head. So she like had her hands like, she's like second set of hands in case he slipped through mine, she could like catch him, which he didn't. I got Heisman hands. So Chance came out and basically right in my hands. Pulled them on out.
Immediately started crying, which was crazy because our girls, it took some coaxing for them to start crying because they were like so quiet and content. It wasn't that anything was wrong. They just like didn't feel the need to cry. He came out and was immediately like, I was like, oh, he's a vocal one.
So we put him on Mom's chest, and Megan wanted to cut the cord, so we waited.
He delivered, and I wanted to cut the cord this time.
Yes, I got to deliver. Yeah. Waited a few minutes, and then she got to cut the cord. It was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool, and it was just so nice having epidural because when they started pushing on my stomach to help clamp the uterus, I didn't feel that, and that's usually like the most uncomfortable thing ever after you deliver, to have someone like punch your stomach.
They call it a massage, a uterine massage.
Yeah, I'm like, it's a annihilation of your stomach. So yeah, that was nice, and then it was just like bliss for the hour and a half that it was just me and him. I was just holding him, nursed him, and like it was just blissful. And it's just been blissful ever since. He has been perfect, and I feel like my recovery has been, like, I honestly don't even feel like I gave birth, probably because I didn't have that pain at the end of the labor, but I was like, did I just give birth? Like, it was just so mind-blowing. It just, like, felt so crazy. And, yeah, I don't know. Like, my milk has been out of this world.
Milk supply has been great.
Like, I just have nothing to complain about. Everything's great. If we could just get him to wake up and eat it, that would be nice.
He eats it, but all he does is sleep, eat,
poop.
Pees too, but that's it.
Yeah, we're getting used to having a boy, having to cover up when we change him because he's had some fun.
So since that was such a good experience, we'll see if I can convince her to make another one of these videos one day.
I don't know. But we love you, Chance. We're so grateful for you to be a part of our family. And we're just excited to get to know his little personality. He's already so sweet.